Athletor Podcast. Man, okay. You know, it's funny. Christopher Fraley is joining us, and so is Siri, apparently. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So you and I go back till I mean, I don't know that people realize, but you were one of the founding four members of Rhino Wrestling Club back in let's call it
03 going in right. Yeah. End of 03, early like the end of the season, 04, like February, we really started going. It was me, Tyke, and then Dallas and Scotty.
Yeah. 4 dudes on a Frankenstein mat.
We had that 10x10, that little red 10x10.
And then we started adding to it. What people don't realize, like we literally had a 10x10.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we would just find like, hey, I heard somebody has a strip of mat that they're not using. So we would take like a 2x10 and then just tape it. Okay. And now we got a little bit more room. And now we kept on adding to it. And out of that room, I don't know, 7 national titles, like 7. A lot of national titles came out of that one room. It's pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, it was crazy back then. So if Mike, I don't know how much he's talked about it before, but we were actually in like a unfinished like attic of a church. It was totally not up to code or anything, and it was sketchy. It was real sketchy because you had like insulation out and like, you know, there's screws here and there, and like we just wanted to wrestle. So at first we had tried first time we had tried to go downstairs in like the nursery, and we rolled it out. We thought it'd be safer. But then we had these 2 brothers there. I won't say the name, but they started like getting into fist fights and cursing each other out, and at the church. So it's like it wasn't really working out in that space. So we went back up into the attic until it got too big. But I think at one point we had like 50 guys rolling around, maybe on like a 25 by 25 area. Like we had a lot of guys up there.
Yeah, 4 turned into 12 quickly, and 12 turned into 30 something way quicker than I thought it was going to. Yeah, and so that's kind of just to give you the people listening a little backstory. Christopher and I go back to when he was just a young wee lad, and now he's doing incredible things through. And this is what really kind of sparked my interest, Chris, was you're taking you're getting back into coaching, right? After a long time away from the sport. You're taking a very unique approach to coaching wrestling that, again, unique is the only way I can put it, but you're using your background in cultural anthropology. Is that correct?
Yep. Cultural anthropology.
And so explain to everyone what cultural anthropology is and then how it can apply to wrestling.
Gotcha. So it's really confusing. When I tell people I'm a cultural anthropologist, they're like, what the hell is that? I've been studying cultural anthropology since 2015. And last year, I finally got to the point where I didn't feel like, what the hell is that anymore? It could really be anything, cultural anthropology. You're studying people. It's, in my opinion, it's the queen of the social sciences, because you got psychology, you got economics, you got sociology. There's a lot of different disciplines you get to draw from. So it's very eclectic, but you're studying humans. You know, it's anthro, it's humans. You're studying humans and specifically their culture and their patterns. So I'd gotten back into that back in 2015. I've always been real nerdy, like to read a lot of books, I could read these dense philosophical texts and I'm weird like that. And so I got into it back then, and at first I didn't realize kind of the import. And over the years, the more I studied, and I finished up my thesis and got published back in 2020. And then I really took off on this research because right around 2020, it was like COVID. And I really dug into it, and I realized hey, there's a tool set here that I could really figure out anything with. So anthropology at its core is you're studying human beings for a certain purpose, and you're using qualitative research methods to find that information. It's just a fancy word for saying I go out and talk with people. I go out and I'm just really good at learning how to ask the right questions and notice the right patterns in behavior to see what they're saying, but they're not saying. So as an anthropologist, the way I view myself when I come in and do work for contract work and or planning sessions and things like that, I'm a participant observer. Like in anthropology, you talk about participant observation. It's a research method that's basically just full immersion. And as I've gotten into it, I've applied this to wrestling. You know, I've always stayed connected to the sport throughout the years, and I love it. You know, if my life would have went differently, I probably would have came out and went right into coaching if I wasn't so young and, you know, not, you know, stupid, you know. Yeah, you're stupid. It's like you try all these things you don't really like, and so I've always like kind of wrestled with it. And you know me, like I didn't have a great end to my high school career. I flamed out. I started late. I was really good, and I had just a real shitty end at nationals my senior year, and I quit. I was just sick of it. I'm like, you know, I'm not cutting weight. I'm not doing this anymore. I train my ass off. I go out there. I can't keep my head straight. You know, I beat good guys all the time, you know, when it didn't really matter. You beat state champs, you beat All-Americans, and then you go out and you have this bad experience. So since then, like, you know, I've stayed involved, and, you know, with my brother Tyler, he wrestled through college, and, you know, I got to train with him and stayed connected to the sport in that sense. And then I started really applying these methods like last August. My son, he got into wrestling and just loved it, just absolutely loved it. And like, he jumped it, huh?
Poor guy.
Yeah, no.
Bug.
He loves it. My daughter loves it more than him. And she's probably going to be better. She's better than me. When I don't have partners right now because I'm training, she rolls with me, and she's good. She's going to be really good. But anyway, so I really I got to reconnect with the sport, and obviously my son loved it, and like I'm a student of the sport. You know, I'm the guy that watches technique videos at 12 o'clock, you know, and like watching the reruns of all this stuff. So I've always loved it. And now my kids have kind of given me a reason to like pursue it more. So I started applying these methods really like last August. I was coaching at Nick Catone's MMA there. I teach one of their wrestling classes. I still teach there right now, and I train over there. And I started just playing around, you know, with my coaching style. And I got into reading when I started training guys like this guy, Jigoro Kano. You know, he founded judo, and some of the philosophical frameworks, and like Hickson Gracie, reading his memoirs, and like sourcing these other traditions within wrestling and seeing how they do things differently. Because I know, like, as an anthropologist, I know cultures do things differently all across the world. And I see something with the American model of wrestling that's just wrong, because we produce a lot of high level, like, you know, guys at a young age that flame out. Like, you know, I've seen it, you know, myself. I've seen it with my brother. Like, my brother's would have been a world champ, you know, if he didn't, you know, burn out, get sick on cutting weight. Like, he finished well in the sport, but he didn't ever reach his peak. And it was for that reason. You know, we came in at the end of that hardcore, like, weight cutting era where they're still weighing in day before. You know, we were doing day before weigh-ins for Northeast regions and stuff, you know, and so you were like at the end of that era where you're getting really burnt out. And like, I see it. I've always loved the sport, and to see that love in my son and what he wants to do, I didn't want him to have that experience. So I started taking these methods, specifically autoethnography. Ethnography is what anthropologists do. It's basically you go out, you do your research methods, you bring all the information back, and I look down, I analyze it. And the ethnography part is I'm taking the social theory I know and analyzing it so I could actually use it. So it's a lot of nerdy stuff. My theoretical like orientation with the anthropology, I like to talk about embodiment and agency. So embodiment basically is how your body learns shit, how you feel it, how you experience things. Agency is how you act on it. And so like I've read a lot of literature on that, and I'm trying to like bring that and apply it to the pedagogy for wrestling. Like, you know, because I mean, we've talked about this before, and you've always been a student in the sport. And I remember, like, we had like an open door policy almost. Like, you would come in, you would roll with us whenever. We'd watch technique, and like, people don't really do that stuff anymore, you know. And the big clubs, and when you read the people that have been most successful and most innovative in the sport, they don't have this like factory model. They're not like, hey, come in, we're going to show you a high C, we're going to drill it 10 times, you wrestle around for 10 minutes, and we'll send you home. And you know,
well, hold on. Let me stop you there, because I have some questions.
Yeah,
but let's stick with the last thing you just said. Okay. if on a scale of importance, one being very little importance, 10 being vital, okay, how important is, you say open door policy, I say room for creativity, right? How important is it to allow room for creativity? And is it a sliding scale in terms of like, you got to do it at a young age, and maybe you don't have to do it, or vice versa? How important is leaving that type of room for creativity?
Essential. It's the foundation of everything. So this is where I bring in like my work with youth development and curriculum for like adolescent formation and stuff. Like, you see patterns of how kids develop, and then you see the way we're coaching wrestling, and there's a disjuncture there. We don't allow the creativity. Like, it's more of there's this guy, his name is Paulo Freire. He's a Brazilian educator, and he turned this thing called the banking model of education, which is basically, hey, I'm an expert. You don't know it. I'm going to tell you, and you just memorize what I say. Bad. That's a bad model of education. That's bad. A good model of education, what he called critical pedagogy, was teaching people how to teach themselves, teaching them how to reflect. And he had a Portuguese word that's like, I think it translates like conscientiation or something like that, but like the process of becoming aware so that they can make their own decisions. So I'd studied Fraley, and like when I was getting back into, I'm reading Hicks and Gracie, from the Gracie family, and he's freaking unreal. And I'm reading their memoirs and like the way he trains, and he's talking about surfing and doing all this other stuff. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, like when I started doing this stuff in my life, I became happier. I became better. Like, back around 2020, I kind of started reinventing myself. Like, I had my third kid in late 2019. Just stress was out the wazoo, and I started like pouring into like wellness research and things as well. So what I've tried to do with this program is you bring it in and you give kids tools, and it's not just the wrestling. You allow the creativity, but it's a lifestyle coaching. We're trying to do this is a way of life. Like, wrestling can be a way of life. That doesn't mean everybody has to make their money wrestling, but wrestling is a way of life. It's a philosophy about how you go about the world. And you give kids building blocks, you give students building blocks, but you allow them to create. So the way I run my practices is a lot of play-based. I got this from reading Hicks and Gracie's stuff, and he's talking about when they were little, there was no technique. They were rolling when they're kids, and they just rolled, and they rolled. So what I do is I set up games. The way I run my practice structure, I'll start with a hand fight. Then we'll go from a hand fight to an attack, hand fight, attack to counter, hand fight, attack to counter, re-attack, down the line. So what I do is we come in and we kind of play wrestle. We set up a game. So the first thing is the hand fight. I'll show an entry. And like yesterday, our game was, okay, we're doing snaps. We're just trying to get behind the back. That's all we do. I show them a basic, hey, we're going to push the head down, block the arm. We're just trying to do a basic go behind. And you set up the game. So they're doing it and they're getting the technique and they're exposed to it. But as they actually get to try it, you can jump in and you can correct them in real time. And I got this from you. You were the best at that. When we would wrestle, you would wrestle with me and you would stop me in the moment. You would stop me in the moment when I was hitting something wrong and I couldn't finish. You wouldn't grind my face into the mat and make me feel like an asshole for like doing the wrong thing. You would sit there and you would make me figure out the position and you would talk me through it. That's what I'm doing with these kids. I roll with them actively every practice. We're keeping it intentionally small to allow the room for that creativity and allow that kind of like, open door, like, hey, this is like, we're a group, we're coming, we love to do this. We're going to do this way of life together and we're going to help each other do it. And what we're doing is a little different. It's I set up my house. So I put about 400 square feet of mat space on my deck. It's roofed. We come out and we roll. We have a few families that are going right now. We come, we eat a meal, and we wrestle together. I get some of the dads involved and we coach, and it's a lot of one-on-one instruction, but with this play-based model, it's working. I mean, I don't let my kid really compete. He competed once this year and he tech penned his way through the tournament. He would have pinned everybody in about 10 seconds, but I told him, you can't do that. Yeah. I'm like,
you gotta work. No,
it's for other kids either. I'm like, you go out there and pin somebody in 10 seconds, you're just going to quit and you don't get to work.
Right.
And,
yeah,
but like, it's working and I see it. My son loves it. He wants to wrestle. They asked me to roll out the mats. and I just kind of keep that openness. So when we run our practices, it's not real formal. I'll run through about a 45-minute structure, playing those games with like a match simulation at the end. And a lot of times I make it not about win or lose. Like I always stack it one way or the other. So one guy's always behind, one guy's ahead. And you switch vice versa. You're playing games. So it's not so much if they lose the game, they're like, oh man, this guy's so much better than me. Well, you lost the game. You didn't catch back up and beat him, but he had a lead already. You're drilling the situation. You're drilling the stresses. And I'm drawing on this concept from jiu-jitsu. Like, there's a book I came across. It's called Transforming Trauma with Jiu-Jitsu. And there's a couple therapists that got around and they start studying the art of jiu-jitsu. And they're like, hey, man, when somebody's choking the life out of you, it's pretty stressful. And they're like, but if you learn how to do that and keep yourself calm, like your body's going to stay calm in stressful situations. And so I read this and I'm thinking, hey, we could do the same thing in wrestling. We create stressful situations that are going to create this heightened sense where they're being flooded with all these different endorphins and everything, and being forced to bring their body down to a place where they can make a calm, cool decision. We've talked about this. I think wrestling is an embodied sport. There is a natural knack to it, but I believe there's an art that can be studied and learned.
Sure.
And, what I'm trying to do with the kids that we're working with is we create these games, we create these high pressure scenarios that occur a lot. Like a thing we drill a lot is like, head down, it's like everybody gets stuck on a sweep with your head down. We drill the danger positions. And I take this, there's a guy I was listening to when I started training jiu-jitsu, and he talked about this approach to learning jiu-jitsu, train the bad positions. And the Gracie said this, and I'm like, well, why don't we just do this in wrestling? We do this all the time with, shooting high crosses, but really high crosses aren't that complicated to shoot. But what is complicated is getting a guy like off your back when your face is getting ground into the mat. And I think our approaches, though, we focus on the wrong games in the sport. We focus on things like you see it at the highest level. What's the most common takedowns to go behind? You're not doing like for the most part. Yeah, but most times it's go behind. It's simple takedowns. And I think we invest a lot of time. I love technique. I love playing with the sport, but I think we overwhelm kids at an early age because we throw out all this technique and they're not ready for it. They just need to wrestle. They just need to roll around.
It's like, first of all, Joel, go ahead. I'll come back to what I was about to say.
You talked about, excuse me, creating stressful situations and helping the kids kind of calm their mind in these environments. What are some methods that you approach to kind of put them in these situations and get them kind of thinking comfortably, in a stressful situation?
Gotcha. So one game I set up, we play a lot. That's really cool. So the coach is normally in the middle. It's kind of like, they're trying to run past me. I stay in a stance, they're in a stance. We have to face each other. You can't run. You have to stay in stance. Their job's to get past me. My job's to get them. If I grab them, I immediately take the back. I throw hooks in. I get my boots, and I'm under the arms, and I'm wrapping them up tight. The stressful situation, I let them know they're locked, and I'll talk to them like, all right, now we got to go to work. Where are my hands? They talk. My daughter will do it great. I don't even have to tell her now. I lock her up, and she goes, where's his hands? She'll start peeling them. And then where's the feet? And I make them work out. My son hates it because he's like me. He has that anxious temperament, and you get confined. Who wants to be confined? It sucks. But you get better at it. And mental health, practitioners have been doing this for a long time. It's called exposure therapy. You expose yourselves to things that are going to cause you stress because over time your body becomes used to it. And you're going to be able to perform at a high level, even in those most stressful situations, because you trained your body through your breath work and through your disciplines to.
And just decision-making process becomes far more relaxed.
Yeah. Well, what happens is a lot of times it's like, I got really into evolutionary psychology, right? Evolutionary psychology tells us,
As you do,
Yeah, some stuff. But basically, the idea of evolutionary psychology, our brains have evolved and adapted over time, to meet certain needs. But modern brains are kind of stuck in the Stone Age because we still have this part of our brain that sends out that fight or flight. And so we get triggered and get anxious over silly stuff because evolutionarily we had like saber-toothed tigers chasing us down, and that fight or flight was really helpful. But nowadays you get kids get anxious because their Cheerio, fell in the milk before and they wanted it separate, and it's like, so we have this prime system that's ready to like jump. And I think I see it with kids a lot. They're so hyped, but they don't know how to calm it. They don't know how to control it. Their body's juiced because, we're built that way. We're built for our bodies to kick into gear, to go into that fight mode and to do what we need to do. But when you don't know how to control it, you just make mistakes. You just open yourself up. When you wrestle angry, you almost always lose,
Dude,
At least for me, every time I've ever wrestled angry or upset, I've lost.
Yeah.
I've never won a match.
At a high level, right? I mean, like
I'm
I'm sure that there are exceptions when you're wrestling a bum, but it doesn't really matter.
No,
right?
I'm talking about like wrestling real guys. Like I've
Yeah.
never beat a legitimate competitor if I started to crack during the match.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's a mental piece. And the Zanettis from back in the day with Eugene. I listen to their podcasts and stuff, and that's what they're doing with this. They're just taking basic sports psychology and positive psychology and applying it to our sport. And they're
God forbid.
There's a science to it, and we help guys to realize. I think the wrestling's come a long way, but at least my perception in America, we still have this idea a lot of times that like the wrestler is supposed to be, the badass guy, the tough guy, the grind your face into the mat kind of guy. And like, that's not bad, but if that's all we see ourselves as, we're limiting ourselves as the discipline. And I see this going into jiu-jitsu, like the way they approach stuff, they set a lot of traps, and there's a real playfulness to the sport. It's not my primary discipline and never will be because I don't like that style, but I see the effectiveness and how you can use that to tamper the over aggressiveness of wrestling a lot of times.
Sure. That makes sense. All right. So let me start firing some interesting questions at you. When you say so as a cultural anthropologist, you go out into the field and you ask questions with a specific, let's call it, goal in mind. What questions are you asking young athletes to get a sense of where you want them to be on a wrestling mat? And what questions are you asking parents? Okay, and let's go with the athlete first, but also I do want to talk about the parents. Okay,
so you want me to go athlete first?
Yes, please.
So the main thing is you're just spending time. Like the thing is not to overcomplicate it. I do work. I'm working with people to like teach the basic methods and stuff like that. For like a guided experience. But a lot of it, once you learn the method, you're teaching yourself. It's straightforward and you're applying it. But I'm asking just you're talking to people normal. And making space to get kids away. And a thing I like to do is try to like keep kids and parents separate a little bit. Because you've coached a long time. You got the parent, he needs to do X, Y, Z, if only he would do this, but he's an asshole and all this stuff. And you got parents and I just need a little space with the kid, So last night I took the one kid aside and you're talking to him, he's getting into it. And you get him away from mom and dad, and now you have a chance to hear like what he wants out of the sport, not what they want and what they think he needs, but just being intentional about creating this space to speak to students. And it's not even about asking the right question all the time, but allowing them the space to tell you stuff. And a lot of times when you just create an opening for them to tell you stuff, then you know what questions to ask.
Right.
But
So maybe that's a better way to quantify it. How do you create that space? Is it just simply setting them aside from their parents, or is it like, hey, how you feeling today? How do you go about it?
So, all right, there's many different things. So in the one-on-one mentoring part, I take some of the stuff I've studied from youth formation stuff over the years, and I build that into my own kind of approach, and that's hard to break down. And but the main thing is creating space and being intentional. The way we set it up, the practice isn't grinding the whole time. We're here 2 hours. We eat a meal together, we wrestle, then there's a free play time at the end. If they want to wrestle, they do whatever. The kid last night, he comes with me, I'm watering my grass. I take him out, I'm like, hey, come on, I got a job for you. He comes out and we're just sitting, talking, watering the grass. But then he's able to tell me now. I got him away from his parents, he's away from the other kids, there's nobody here. And he's able to talk to me. And then I start to get an idea of why he's here, And then I know what to ask him. His was funny. He's getting bullied in school, and he's like, I want to be able to hurt people. I'm like, well, we'll try to tamper that a little bit. I like the spirit of that. But then you give you space to see what's bringing him, what's driving him. So you know how to redirect their mindset too. Because when we don't give, kids are really smart. Like, I did youth work for years, and like, we treat kids like they're stupid, and like we delay them, and treat them like children until they're like, in their 30s. Like, kids are freaking smart. If you give them a space to talk, a kid will teach you a lot of things, but again, and my wife helped me with this. My wife is really good at organizing space, like to build community. And there's some weird anthropologist, like nerdy stuff I read about like community organizing and things like that. So we're bringing principles in from like community organizing and just like how you set up a physical space to increase like this cohesiveness and allow a level of comfortability to where you can get to a deeper level with a family. The model, like the consumer model, doesn't work. Like coming up to a club and, hey, drop your kid off, come back in an hour, pay your bill, and we're good to go. We're trying to get out of that like consumer-based model. I'm like, no, we want you here. We're friends. You're not just, somebody we're making money off of. Like, you're our friend. We love you. Like, we want to do life together. We want to work together. And like, let's get at this. And so
how does that apply to the parents then? Like, how do you talk to parents about?
So this is what we offer that's unique, and what really comes from the work I've done with people with disabilities is doing person-centered planning. So part of our package, like, kids, if they sign up with their tuition, they get a 30-minute planning session once a month. I sit down with them, mom and dad. Throughout the month, I wrestle with the kid. I've taught the class, I've seen them wrestle other kids. I take my notes. I'm being a good anthropologist. I just have a pocket notebook, and I'm taking notes on every practice right afterward, and I have my kids do it. Not just my kids, the kids I'm training. It's a basic anthropological tool. You see, it's called taking field notes. And so we stop with the kids and we cause them to reflect after every practice. First, we start and be like, hey, how's your week going? What went well, what didn't? Like, what do you want to work on today? Boom, we set it up. We do our dynamic stretch, go through it. At the end, we bring out the pocket notebooks. They always write down what worked, what didn't work, what they want to work on. So they're keeping a running log. I'm basically teaching the kids how to be mini anthropologists, like, just simple stuff that's note taking, but it's building more neural connections in their brain. It's basic neuroscience. It sounds like pie in the sky type stuff, but like there's PhDs that are, studying the brain and neuroscience and these different disciplines that'll back it up all day long. So we build this into the approach and the structure, because it's not just the on the mat learning. And I think a lot of times why we have burnout in wrestling is because we approach it as something that's isolated from the rest of life, when wrestling really should be something that informs the way we do the rest of our lives, not vice versa. I do believe it's a lifestyle. I believe it's like a value set. It could be a value set. I don't know, but it's like a worldview almost. Sure. It's the way you're approaching
there's
the world.
No question.
You have your philosophic foundation for the way you're looking at the world, and it's causing you to live a certain way. And I live the way I do now because I'm training wrestling, and that's the fact of the matter. It is a way of life. I've started all this stuff with like, the nature stuff I do, and like all these different pieces I work into it. It's a lifestyle, teaching kids that wellness component. And so it's going beyond, but you're teaching them the reflective process, but you're giving them other tools. Like, once a month we do an outing where we take a ruck through either Alair State Park, which is local here, or at the beach. Ruck is like it's a primal movement. It's one of the most foundational human patterns. You give a kid a backpack, throw a little weight in it, just start walking. Get them outside. I don't want the kids sitting in front of the screen all day playing video games. Like, teach the kids where they need to be in life to feed their body the right way. And it's that other component of taking these wellness practices and the science and educating the parents. So there's a monthly curriculum component for the parents, and it's nothing like they're not studying a PhD, like, and going through book after book. It's the stuff I've researched and I put together and break it down, but where parents are given tools to focus on breathing techniques, other wellness techniques, food patterns, things that they can apply for their own holistic lifestyle development, not just for their kids, stuff that's going to make them a healthier family unit. And that's kind of the stuff that I'm really passionate about, because I think wrestling is great. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to teach everybody that, hey, the goal of wrestling is to be a champ, you're going to get a lot of like, bitter ex-wrestlers that try to, they show up in high school wrestling rooms to beat up on kids all the time, and that's what happens.
That has happened. That
No,
is
it happens
100%.
all the time. You got that, you're the warrior that never kind of lived up to what they want to do, and then they come in and they beat up on high schoolers and say they're helping give back, and
God, it's so common. It's so common in our sport.
And we create that situation though, because we don't tell people, like when we're only focused on the success, we set them up for failure. So what I do in these planning sessions, we focus on positions, bite-sized goals. I don't want you to tell me my goal is to win, the New Jersey State Championships this year. Like, man, you're setting yourself up for failure right off the bat, because you've not set any steps up to get there. So if you don't achieve that one goal and you've not set any other goal, you look at the end of the year like I did, and like at the end of my senior year, like I suck, and that's what you're telling these kids when you don't teach them how to set goals appropriately. So we work on positions, and through this reflective process, I'm taking notes on the kids. The kids are taking notes on what they're working on. And we say, okay, I've noticed this month, Tyler's getting in on a sweep on you. Every time he gets in, he's able to finish because you're out of placement. Let's work on this position next month. Say the kid goes out and competes, and so kid gets in deep on a sweep. But this time he gets an ankle wither. He gets the hip back. He's able to cut around and gets a takedown, but then he gets pinned. Well, he got pinned. He lost the match, but he just won the position. He won it. And so the kid comes off the mat instead of, oh man, I just got pinned again. I'm no good. I just want to stop, because that happens all the time. Kids, they quit all the time because of stuff like that. But no, when you break it off, and so let's work on winning positions. Let's just work on getting better. The competition doesn't matter right now. I am like fiercely opposed to kind of like youth competition. I'm not like a purist, but my kid wrestled one tournament this year, and like I think we overcompete our kids, and you don't give enough.
Well, what's the drawback, right? So if I'm just going to play devil's advocate, if you can do it in a healthy manner, which is difficult, but if you can, because at the end of the day, we are sending our kids out there half naked in front of all their friends. and because let's call it what it is, right? Like it's a hard situation, man. It's a really but if the kid is enjoying the process of competing, like if they're
it depends on the kid.
So there is a
science. So you can't be a purist. There's not a hard and fast. There are kids that are going to want to compete more, and they have the mental component where they're there. But more often than not, you're going to find kids that they don't, because nowadays 100%. Kids aren't confident nowadays, and psychologists talk about this, like this generation of like helicopter parenting and not allowing kids to make decisions. You see more anxiety in kids now than ever in human history. And it's because we're creating kids that aren't confident. We don't teach them how to teach themselves or allow them to make their own decisions or work towards their goals. So what we're trying to do with the wrestling school here is to create this space where kids can empower themselves, where I don't want to brainwash anybody. I want to teach people the skill set that they'll need to be able to navigate life, and I think the problem in any avenue of life is when you think you have to brainwash somebody, you've missed the point. That misses the point of like, that coach student dynamic, And I encourage the creativity. Like with my son, he don't like to listen to me, but then he goes out, he's got a nasty he hits this little judo foot sweep. And I hate when he does it because he's coming up the head, but he hits it on everybody. And so it's like, you got to give kids, like their room to do it. And I'm like, it drives me crazy because I'm like, man, you're going to get planted sometime. And he does every now and then, but he don't care, and you got to allow kids to do that though. And it's like, I remember, like, not with you, but with high school coaches, they're always trying to tell you not to do certain things, but why? Like, if a kid's having success with something, help them develop it. I might not be able to do it.
Forget about success.
Yeah, if they're having fun. My son comes up with a smile. He does it. He loves it. And there's one training partner. The kid's good too. He's got a nasty little sag headlock, and he loves ripping his head off. And he sees it as soon as the kid tucks his head, he goes, and my son waits for it and he times it. He's like Tyler. Remember Tyler's little fag headlock?
He had a great headlock.
Well,
headlock, he won 4 national titles one year just with headlock in the gut.
I just grin sometimes watching my son wrestle because I'm like, he likes that same kind of stuff, and it's funny because it's just like natural for him. But
All right, go ahead, Joel.
Man, I have so many questions here, but I think it kind of just brings an interesting kind of dynamic there of developing kids. And when you see something like that, that's a little bit out of the ordinary, that I talk about it with my friend who I coach with. It's sometimes you have kids that are just cowboys, and like, do you try and rein them in and focus on like being more fundamental, or does it make more sense to lean into like, hey, let them be a cowboy, like teach them how to throw their hat in the ring and let the chips fall where they may.
And so I may have said that a little more harshly than I intended. So I do intend to compete, but like my competition schedule ideally would be like, for youth wrestling, maybe a tune-up, and then like your state qualifier, state tournament for the season. Maybe wrestle them 3 times, and something like that for like your freestyle season. Same thing, like a tune-up, your state, your regional, nationals. Competition is good. It's going to keep you sharp, but not like, like when kids, you get 5-year-olds going to a tournament every weekend. How can that be good for them? It's just, who wants to sit in a gym for that many hours every Saturday with people screaming? And it's good. They need the exposure, but there's that balance, and it's so the thing, what I'm trying to approach, and I can go almost too far the other way. But I just feel like you see Russia, they do it different. They don't compete the same way we do. And then you look at the world, what do you get? 7, 8 Russians ranked at every weight with like another 4 wrestling for other countries, But they train different than we do. And there's something in the water, it's like they don't compete their kids the same way, And
but I think Joel, what he meant more of is like the technical aspect of it, right? If you see that kid going sag headlock, do you full like there has to be some component of, hey, you do need to learn how to down block too, right? Like there has to be a certain component of like basic fundamental
skills. I thought you were talking more about the competition. Yeah, I mean, I think you gauge it based on what success they're having too. And I have to stop my son. So, and if he hits it bad, I won't let him hit. I'll dust him on it, And it's just because I'll let you hit it a few times, but if you mess up, then I'm gonna stop letting you hit it. And so I don't care if kids want to do unorthodox things, but you got to know the ways out too. So then you drill the chain. It's the same thing, we drilled this when you coached us years ago. We would work the chains and like, you work the series, what comes after. And I do that a lot with the guys. Like we'll work a Russian and we'll 7 finishes off of it. They'll drill it on their own. I'll tell them to start drilling now and they know to run their series, So I try to place them in the position. So if I know my son likes that position, I work the opportunities there. He's good with the Russian too. I love the Russian. It's my strongest tie. Probably a Russian to an over is still my strongest tie. And I notice my son likes it, so I'll stop. And that's why I focus with him. I'll show him 7 or 8 things. I'm like, focus on this. Learn how to hand fight. Get into your position, and now you know. There's a limited amount of things that you can do on a wrestling mat. Like there's not an infinite amount of things, and there's not always a new situation. The situations are reoccurring. They happen maybe slightly differently each time. But if you teach kids the positions and the possible outcomes in those positions rather than the technique itself, I think that's the heart of the approach. That's the heart of my approach. That's what I see to be most effective, is teaching them how to navigate the position and showing the other attacks and defenses that come in that position, rather than let's just work on finishing this high crotch, And
what else you got for us there, Joel? Anything? Because I can go too.
Yeah. So you one of the things you mentioned was, you really kind of focus on providing frameworks to solve problems as opposed to giving answers. How do you take, a new kid who's joining your club who may be looking for all the answers and kind of like turning that to, help them to find the answers on their own?
Yeah. It's through some of the drills, through the empowerment stuff. Like, even so, going back to the game we talked about before, at the end of the day, it's not only something to help them calm their body, but it's a confidence boost. I see it with my son already. I've been doing it with him a few weeks, and he gets in the first day, he's panicked, screaming. His breathing's real shallow, and he can't figure it out. A couple weeks in now, he's got himself calmed down, but he's getting more confident. Like, you know, he's learning. And when kids do stuff, it's just simple as positive affirmation, like the power of our words. You go into any high school wrestling and you'll see there's still that old school mentality of like, hey, let's cut a guy down, you know, to the floor and then expect him to go be a state champ. Not everybody, but you see it a lot. And so we're just combating that. We're not, hey, no, this negative approach doesn't really work for most kids. So it's a lot of focus.
I'd say 80%. It's got to be close to 80%.
If not more. If not more.
Well, here's the thing about it, though. The biggest, and this drives me freaking crazy, is that they hold up the 20% and go, see, it works. No, it doesn't, dude. We could have so much more.
No. And it's like, I don't know. To me, you know, it's like, the proof's in the pudding. You see the programs that come with that grind it out, like, you know, like mentality. They're just, and the guys that are like that playful, real student type mentality, the playful student approach is always the better approach. You know, without naming programs, you see it at the collegiate level. The ones that have that approach to sport, they're the best. You know, they are. And it's just, I think it's time for the sport as a whole to kind of evolve and start moving away and not lose wrestling's character, like that inherent toughness and that grit. Like, that's good. We want that. We want that attack mindset, but to also realize it's more than just going out there and banging heads with somebody. Like, this is a science. This is like you're teaching your body to do incredible things out there on this mat, and just the placement of a few inches makes all the difference in the world. Like, it's a science, you know, it's an embodied science.
What if they lie to you?
What's that?
What if they lie to you? Right?
What?
You used to lie to me constantly.
What did I lie to you about, huh?
Mostly your weight.
Oh my God, my weight. Yeah, I always lie to you about my weight.
You 100, like, I would ask Christopher, what's your weight like? He's like, right now? No, 7 days from now, what's your weight like? Yeah. So yeah, like, I guess my question is, like, first of all, the kids think they're lying to you, but they're not, because you can generally tell.
Yeah.
But what if you feel like they're not being truthful? Like what if you feel like they're just holding back? You know, I say lie, but if that's probably a stronger word. But maybe if they're not being 100% truthful with you.
This is the thing, and this is why we focus so much on the community component, because you're never going to get inside a kid's mind when they don't trust you. You know, if they don't trust you like a friend or a family, I don't care who the hell you are, you're not getting inside that kid's head. You're not, you know? So we structure our environment. This is why, instead of going out and renting a space, I set up mat space at my house. And we have an island, and we set up like buffet style, and we eat like this to encourage an environment where kids are going to feel comfortable. We're creating a safe space. You know, we want this to be a space where kids, they look forward to come to, that they know they have, like, you know, their parents, their friends, people that are supporting them in life. So they can share those hopes and dreams. But part of this planning process we do with the planning sessions, and I bring this in from the person-centered work I've done with people in disability communities, where you have a yearly planning session. So somebody signs up for an annual contract, they have a yearly planning meeting. In the work I've done in the disability community, we use these tools called PATH and MAPS. It's a person-centered planning tool with some graphic illustration, but it's basically just a communal event where you help people plan like what they want to do, and you sign people up.
So someone with a disability would have a planning session that included close friends, family members, caregivers, everyone.
They're awesome. So when I got into the work that I was doing, we used to be able to do a lot of that, and I loved it, you know, because you could resource people, and they're beautiful when they work, because you get people band together and they rally around. and they help people achieve their goals. And we move people out of institutions and into homes and getting their own apartments and getting their first jobs. We're taking the same thing. We're like, hey, we're doing this for people in disability communities. We can do this with the kids we work with. This is the same planning method. These are the same principles. This is just teaching people how to connect together. This is just bringing and creating a community that's going to create the accountability. Because at the end of the day, if I look at myself as the guru and I drop dead tomorrow, the kids I'm working with are screwed. You know, they are, right?
I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, they're screwed. So
Yeah.
if all their hope is in me as the guru, I'm the guy you got to come to. Chris, we got to talk to Chris. He's the guy. He's going to get it done for us. They're screwed in life. If they think that I'm the guy, because they're never going to have that confidence.
Wow.
So what I'm trying to do is through these planning processes and through this intentional mentorship component is to create confident kids that if I drop dead tomorrow, it's going to suck for my biological children. They're going to grieve me. It's going to be hard, but they're going to have a skill set and a tool set to be resilient in life. And that's what we're trying to do and create a community. Whereas they're not just connected to me, they're going to be connected here in our house because we got 25, 30 people eating meals together. Like they were creating almost like a family structure. And this is even how we named our school. We named it the Phoenix Tribe Wrestling School. And tribe just to really focus on this group component, this way of coming together and like, hey, we're going to do this way of life together and we're going to keep each other accountable and we're going to work towards our goals and make sure we get them.
And the parents are on board, and the moms are, I shouldn't say that, the moms and the dads are on board, because that's not always going to be an easy sell to every parent. Yeah.
No, you got to sell people. So they aren't on board, and this is why I'm not going to have 2,000 kids. It's like because people don't want to do a lot of times what it takes to really, like, it's a big commitment. It is, and people a lot of times they don't want to get out of the comfort zone. And it's hard. We all if you have kids, you're in the rat race. You're running around all the time.
Sure.
And it's hard to commit to things. So what we're trying to do is just make it easier for parents who don't have the resources themselves to do these types of planning things and do it with them, with their children. So they learn how to do the planning methods. They learn the tools. But we're providing that as an additional service in our membership packages because kids need it. And realistically, I got 3 kids. I don't have somebody to do that with me. Like I'm up till 12, 1 in the morning every day working, and I wake up and you start working. It's like that's life. It's you got 3 kids and you're grinding, and so I get it. So what we're trying to do is alleviate that for parents. It's not like it's just a problem of education. We don't have access to all the right resources. And if we could help parents who don't have the capacity to access those resources on their own, or kids that don't have the skill set to access those on their own, that's what we want to do. We want to put access to those resources so people can kind of find what works for them, because not all practices are going to work for everybody equally. And they could find those things that are going to ground them in life, those things that are going to help them move through. And like, goal setting and person-centered planning, that's not a wrestling thing. This is going to make you successful as a human being. Like, you're going to be able to do that for the rest of your life. These things I'm teaching the kids, you do this the rest of your life and you're going to be successful in anything you do. You will be, so it's and that's what we're trying to do. It's more, we want good human beings. We're going to make good wrestlers. The good wrestlers will come because when you allow room for creativity and play and you set it up that way, the wrestling's going to take care of itself. But we want good human beings. We want good human beings.
Yeah, we need to focus more on that as a culture in this sport, 100%. All right, we have to get moving here. Christopher, thank you very much for. I don't think I've learned more in a 50-minute podcast in my life. So that was incredible. Thank you, number one. But secondly, how do people so? You and I are going to talk about Athletor offline, but as of right now, how can people get a hold of you if they hear this and they want to start at least moving in the direction of using some of the stuff that you're doing?
Sure. So they can I got my professional site that should be up today. It's just my full name, Christopher D. Fraley. So on that site, there'll be access to the Phoenix Tribe Wrestling School. It's its own tab, and then another tab with more the professional work I do with like user research and program evaluation and the way I apply some of those qualitative skills professionally. But yeah, it'll be on that site. I talked to the guy last night. It looked good this morning, and so but Christopher D. Fraley. And so they can,
.com.
yeah, ChristopherDFraley.com. That's it.
Okay. Awesome, man.
So,
Well, thank you very much for coming on and sharing some incredible stuff. Joel, I didn't get to like a third of my questions.
So
Okay,
many more questions. I have
so
so many
but
more
we
questions.
we do got to roll here because we got another one coming up at 10.
I got
but
it.
we'd love to have you back if that's okay.
Yeah, whenever. Just let me know.
Okay, thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
All right, I'll see you guys. Thanks for
Later, bud.
talking.
Yeah, bud. Later.